My girlfriend faked a miscarriage. She was never pregnant. It was all to keep me from leaving. I had never felt anything as contradictory as I did that night. We were in her room, under the dim light of an old lamp, and the rain was tapping against the windows. Isabella sat at the edge of the bed, gripped my hand tightly, and without looking me in the eye, dropped the bomb. "I'm pregnant." It felt like the world split in two. On one hand, panic. I was only 24, had a part-time job, and a relationship that was shakier than I liked to admit. On the other hand, the dizzying rush of hope. Maybe a baby would change everything. Maybe, finally, we'd have a reason to stop fighting. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice trembling. She nodded, and her eyes filled with tears. In that moment, I didn't doubt her. I hugged her. I promised I'd be there, that we would be a family, that nothing else mattered. That night, we slept in each other's arms, like we hadn't in months. For the first time in a long time, I felt like something was binding us beyond routine, beyond jealousy, absurd fights, and coming and going. But the days passed, and cracks started to appear. There were no ultrasounds, no doctor's appointments. Every time I asked about the doctor, she'd say everything was fine, but that she preferred to take it slow. That stress wasn't good for her. That she'd have proof once things were further along. I wanted to believe her, truly. But there was something strange in the way she acted. Sometimes she seemed nervous, like she was afraid someone might ask her questions. Other times, she'd change the subject abruptly. I started to notice details. Her body wasn't changing, her diet remained the same, and there wasn't a single instance of morning sickness. One night, while she was asleep, I checked her purse. I know it was wrong, but my anxiety was eating me alive. Among crumpled papers and makeup, I didn't find a single prescription, no positive test. Nothing. My head was spinning. I wanted to confront her, but I was scared. What if she was pregnant? What if I was just a paranoid one ruining something good? But fate decided for me. 2 weeks later, I got a message from her at 3 a.m. "I'm bleeding. I lost the baby. Call me." I jumped on my bike, heart pounding. When I arrived, she was on the floor, a towel between her legs and tears in her eyes. She was screaming in pain. I called emergency services. They took us to the hospital. The doctors treated her. I waited in the room, shattered, praying for a child I didn't even know existed. After an hour, a doctor came out and asked to speak with me privately. "Are you her partner?" "Yes. I'm sorry to inform you that your girlfriend shows no signs of ever having been pregnant. There was no miscarriage, no loss. Her symptoms were induced. Everything points to it being simulated." I didn't understand. I literally didn't understand. Simulated? What do you mean? There's blood, but it's not the result of a miscarriage. Most likely, she hurt herself to provoke the bleeding. I was in shock. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I just thought about all those nights she cried in my arms, all the time she talked about baby names, how we planned to move to a quieter place. It had all been a lie. I didn't see her again that night. I left the hospital without saying a word. I turned off my phone. I sat on a park bench until the sun came up. When I got home, there were dozens of messages from her. Long, tearful, desperate. She begged me to talk to her, to not leave her alone. She swore she did it all for love, that she was losing me, that she needed something to hold on to me. And that's when everything became clear. There was never pregnancy. No miscarriage. Just a relationship that had already ended, and a person willing to manipulate life and death to stop me from leaving. I felt betrayed in a way I didn't know was possible, but it wouldn't end there. What I didn't know was that the worst was yet to come. In the days following that devastating discovery at the hospital, my life became a shadow of what it once was. I woke up with a sick stomach, a tight chest, and a suffocating mix of rage, confusion, and pain. I had fallen in love with a lie, cried over a child who never existed, and worst of all, I felt guilty for not realizing it sooner. I tried to go back to my routine. I returned to work, but my coworkers noticed my distant stare. I ordered coffees I didn't drink, replied to emails without reading them. Everything felt twice, 3 times as hard. And her, she didn't stop. Every day, I received messages from her. Not just on WhatsApp. She emailed me, left notes in my mailbox, even sent a handwritten letter I found taped to my apartment door. They all said the same thing, that she was sorry, that she loved me, that she didn't know how else to keep me. That I shouldn't hate her. One night, returning from work, I saw her waiting at the entrance of my building. She was wearing a scarf I had given her for her birthday, and her eyes were red from crying. As soon as she saw me, she ran toward me, arms open. "Please, just listen to me. 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes." I tried to walk past her, but she stepped in front. She grabbed my arm and was trembling. "How could you lie to me like that?" I burst out. "How could you play with something so sacred? A child, Isabella? A child, she collapsed right there on the rain-soaked sidewalk, fell to her knees, and started screaming. Literally screaming, "I love you." I was scared. I didn't want you to leave. I didn't know what else to do. Neighbors started peeking through their windows. I stood there frozen, not knowing whether to help her or disappear. I ended up kneeling beside her, holding her shoulders and saying, almost pleading, "You have to go. This isn't healthy. This isn't love. This is sickness." I helped her up, called her a cab, and waited until she left. But she didn't stop. She started messaging my friends, my mom, my boss. She told them I was depressed, that I needed help, that she was my emotional support, that I had gotten her pregnant, that the miscarriage had broken her. The rumors started. Some looked at me with pity, others with judgment. My mom called me one Sunday. "Son, did you really abandon Isabella after she lost the baby?" I almost had my phone out the window. I told her everything, with tears in my eyes. My mom was silent for a long time and then just said, "I believe you, but this will follow you for a long time." And it did. For weeks, I lived with the feeling that everyone doubted me. People didn't know who to believe. She was sweet, fragile, emotional. I was just a confused, quiet guy. In the war of appearances, she had all the weapons. One early morning, I was woken up by a sound. Someone was banging on the door. Loud, desperate. I got up and looked through the peephole. It was her, soaked from the rain, knocking nonstop. "Please open up. Open. I just want to talk." I didn't. I called the police. When they arrived, she was still there, screaming my name. When they tried to calm her, she began to cry, saying I was her partner, that they couldn't take her, that she was pregnant. She was lying, again and again, even to the authorities. The officers asked if I wanted to press charges for harassment, but I didn't. I was too broken. All I wanted was to disappear. I packed my things and left the city for a while. Took a leave of absence from work, turned off my phone, and stayed at a cousin's farm in the countryside. No internet, no news, just trees, silence, and my mind trying to put the broken pieces back together. There I spent entire days looking at the sky, thinking about all I ignored, all the times I felt something was off and stayed quiet. My self-esteem was in shambles. I felt stupid, weak, vulnerable. One day, while walking a path, I came across an old lady selling arepas. She greeted me warmly and, without knowing anything about me, said something I'll never forget. "There are people who love with fear, son, but fear doesn't justify the harm." I cried. I cried like a child in front of her, and I understood I needed to rebuild myself. I returned to the city 3 weeks later. I felt stronger, but not completely healed. When I got back, my mailbox was full, and on the door, a note written in red marker. "Do you feel better now? You won't get rid of me that easily." The harassment continued, but something had changed in me. This time, I went to the police. I brought proof. Messages, recordings, screenshots. The officer who attended me listened for over an hour. In the end, she said, "You're not crazy. This is abuse, and we're going to help you." I filed a complaint. They started a restraining order process. The judge granted a temporary order, keeping her 300 meters away from me. And for the first time, I felt someone believed me. Isabella disappeared for a month of peace. I began to rebuild my life with therapy. I focused on writing, on walking, on piecing myself back together. Until one night, I received an email with no subject. It simply said, "I'm not going anywhere. Never. You did this to me," and attached a photo of me taken from a street. Through the window, after the email and the photo, my body went back into that constant state of alert. Every creak, every shadow behind the curtain, every step in the hallway startled me. I was back to sleeping with a knife under my pillow, as if I were at war. In a way, I was. I went back to the police station. They added the email and the image to the existing report. They recommended changing the locks, installing cameras, and avoiding routine routes. I did all of it. I became paranoid. Yes, but a paranoid person still alive. For weeks, I didn't hear from her. Not a single message. Until one Sunday morning, I got a call. It was my cousin Sophia. She was crying uncontrollably. The first thing I thought was, did something happen to my mother? But no, it was worse. My uncle Mauricio, my mother's older brother, had died in a car accident. A drunk driver. Head-on collision. He died instantly. Mauricio was like a second father to me. He was there at my graduation when my dad didn't show up. He helped me get my first job. He taught me how to drive. His death broke me in two. I went to the wake with a shattered soul. The whole family was there. And to my surprise, so was Isabella, dressed in black, with dark sunglasses, standing at the back of the room. Motionless. What is she doing here? I asked, horrified. My mother grabbed my arm, tense. She says Mauricio invited her to a meeting a few weeks ago, that they became friends. "No one wants a scene today, son. Please." I walked away. Went to the bathroom and vomited. Not from grief, but from helplessness. She was invading even my mourning. During the burial, she approached my mother, crying, pretending to be devastated. She handed her a letter. A letter Mauricio asked her to give me if anything ever happened to him. I didn't open it. I didn't believe her. But the damage was done. Many family members were whispering, suspecting the relationship between her and my uncle had been closer than it should. They were isolating me. A week later, Isabella's social media exploded with posts in memory of Mauricio, with photos of them together. Some real, others clearly edited. Comments suggesting a deeper connection. Was she implying they had been a couple? That he had loved her? My mother asked me to ignore it. But the rumor started to spread through the neighborhood. At work, people looked at me strangely, as if I were the intruder. And then came the last straw. A former classmate, who also knew Isabella, messaged me on Instagram. I don't know if you care, but Isabella is saying you emotionally abused her during the supposed pregnancy. That you pressured her into having an abortion, and then abandoned her. I felt my heart explode. My hands were sweating. My stomach burned. It wasn't enough to fake a life. Now she was going to destroy mine publicly. I consulted my lawyer. She advised me not to respond on social media, but to prepare a defamation lawsuit. It wasn't easy. It wasn't fast, but it was possible. The problem was that in the middle of that storm, my mother got sick. A mild heart attack, they said, but it was enough to hospitalize her. When I visited her at the hospital, she held my hand, crying, "Son, I can't take it anymore. I don't want this to consume you. I don't want her to win." And then I understood. This wasn't about my pride anymore. It was about my peace, my family's peace, my uncle's memory, my mother's health. Everything was being used as a weapon. So I went to the press. I contacted a local journalist, showed him the messages, the evidence, everything. I told him I didn't want revenge, just truth. The article was published under the title, "The Story of the Man Accused Over a Loss That Never Happened. Evidence of a Non-Existent Pregnancy." The article went viral. Some people doubted. Others defended me. But the story was out there. And then, an unexpected tragedy. Isabella's mother died. Advanced cancer. I didn't know. No one knew. It was as if the universe shattered for her. I didn't feel joy. I'm not like that. But I did understand something. Without her mother, Isabella completely fell apart. During the wake, she reappeared in my life. This time different. Thinner. Broken. With dark circles. She walked toward me as if she weighed a ton. She handed me an envelope. I wrote it before she died. "I don't want you to forgive me. Just read it when you can." I said nothing. I took the envelope and left. I read it that night. A long letter, full of apologies, of confessions. She wrote that she knew she was sick, that she had lost the line between fantasy and reality, that she truly believed that if she acted long enough, the fiction would become real, that every time I said "I love you," it was like a drug she didn't want to let go of, that she made up the pregnancy because she needed a new bond, that she faked the abortion to manipulate me, that she hated me for discovering her, but hated herself more for needing me. I cried, but not out of sadness, out of relief, because everything was there, confessed. It was real. I wasn't crazy, but I didn't reveal it. I didn't publish the letter. I didn't use it in the lawsuit. I didn't need to. I had already won. Months later, Isabella vanished from social media, from the city. No one saw her again. Some said she checked into a clinic. Others, that she went abroad with an aunt. I don't know. I don't want to know. But every time I walk past the window of that hospital where everything began, part of me remembers. Not the pain, the lesson. There are wounds that don't bleed, but still cut. And there are people who, afraid of being alone, drag others into the abyss. After Isabella's mother's funeral, something changed in the air. It was as if a cycle had closed. Not because there was justice, nor because the pain was gone, but because I finally understood that I didn't need an apology to heal. However, the universe seemed determined to test me one more time. Isabella's letter left a knot in my chest for weeks. I kept it in a drawer, not out of resentment, but because I needed to move on. But apparently, she couldn't. One afternoon, as I was coming home from work, I found a young woman at the door of my building. She had a suitcase and looked disoriented. It was Isabella's younger sister, Camila. I hadn't seen her in years. She was barely 19 now, with the same large, almost frightened eyes she had as a child. "Is it you?" she asked. "Are you the guy my sister was with?" I didn't know what to say. I nodded, and she burst into tears. She said she had nowhere to stay, that her mother had died, her father was abusive, and Isabella had left her without explanation. And the only thing she had found was a note with my address and a phrase written on the back, "He's not bad." It was just me. The situation was surreal. I offered to let her stay that night at my apartment while she contacted her aunt in Austin. Deep down, I was worried. Camila was just another victim of Isabella's emotional collapse. Her presence in my apartment reminded me of a past I was trying to close, but I couldn't leave her on the street. That same night, while we had a simple dinner, she said something that chilled me. My sister, she's not well. They say she's in a clinic, but I'm not sure. My aunt says she went voluntarily, but I think she was forced. I stayed silent. Camila sighed. You know what's the worst part? I don't know whether to hate her for what she did or miss who she was before. Sometimes I think if she had never met you. The sentence hung in the air. I didn't finish my meal. The following days felt like an unfinished novel. Camila managed to contact a family friend and went to live with her. She thanked me for not judging her, for not treating her like a burden. Before leaving, she gave me a notebook she had found among her sister's things. It was a journal, a collection of Isabella's thoughts before, during, and after the fake pregnancy. It took me 3 days to read it. In those pages, I found confessions bordering on obsession. Details of how she planned each lie, how she trained her body language to fake sadness, how she researched forums about miscarriage symptoms, and even how she prepared the fake blood scene. But there were also broken parts. Nonsensical notes. Words repeated like mantras. Don't lose him, don't lose him, don't lose him. Drawings of a baby, phrases that crossed the line of rationality. It hurt to read, not because of what it said, but because it revealed a cruel truth. Isabella was sick, deeply, and I had been part of her delusion without knowing it. Months later, when I thought everything was buried, one piece of news changed everything. Isabella had attempted to take her own life. An overdose. She was institutionalized again, this time in a much stricter facility. It wasn't a rumor. It was official. I learned it from a former university classmate who volunteered there. I didn't know how to feel. I wasn't happy, but I couldn't forget what I had lived. Even so, I decided to go. Not for her. For me. To close that chapter with a shred of humanity. The psychiatric hospital was on the outskirts of the city. When I arrived, they made me wait. I signed some papers. A social worker accompanied me. She told me that Isabella was stable, but with sporadic episodes. That sometimes she remembered everything, and other times she believed she was the mother of a child who didn't exist. I entered the common room. She was there. Thinner. Short hair. Sitting alone, playing with a little rag doll. She looked at me and didn't recognize me. Are you the doctor? She asked, smiling. I didn't answer. I just watched her. In her eyes, there was no resentment. No love either. Just emptiness. As if everything had been erased. I left without saying a word. That night I cried. Not from sadness. Not from relief. It was something else. Something more complex. Maybe it was mourning for something that never existed, but still managed to break me. The next day I received a message. It was Camila. Thank you for going. I know you didn't have to, but thank you. I didn't reply. I just closed my phone, stepped out onto the balcony, took a deep breath, and made myself one last promise. Never again let love cloud my judgment. Never again allow compassion to make me complicit in pain. But fate, as always, had one last move. 3 years passed since the last time I saw Isabella. 3 years in which I rebuilt myself, brick by brick. It wasn't a quick or glamorous process. There were relapses, sleepless nights, therapy, and days when even getting out of bed felt impossible. But there were also beautiful sunrises, books that made me feel accompanied, and new people who came into my life without knowing how much I needed them. One of those people was Juliana. I met her at a bookstore while we were loudly debating the ending of a book we both loved. It was a clumsy, funny beginning and completely without expectations. And that changed everything. I fell in love without pressure, without the need for promises or fantasies. For the first time, I felt peace. I didn't talk much about Isabella, at least not at first. Not because I wanted to hide it, but because I still didn't know how to tell a story that felt more like fiction than reality. But when I did, she simply took my hand and said, "What matters is not what you lived through, but that you chose not to repeat it." And she was right. By then, I'd already left the old apartment and landed a new job. I was writing articles for an independent magazine about psychology and wellness. One of them, about toxic relationships and emotional manipulation, went viral. I received hundreds of messages. Some were thank yous. Others were stories of similar experiences. And among them, one left me paralyzed. It was from Camila. I don't know if you remember my voice. Sometimes I don't recognize it either. I wanted to tell you that my sister was released from the hospital 6 months ago. She lives in a supervised home. She's more stable. She's studying painting. She never stopped asking about you. Although now it's no longer with the same obsession. I think she let you go. I just wanted you to know in case one day you want to paint your own closure. I didn't reply. But that night, after thinking it over for a long time, I visited the blog of the institution where she had stayed. There was a virtual art gallery with pieces made by the patients. One in particular caught my eye, an abstract portrait of a faceless male figure surrounded by red lines, but with a white shadow emerging from his chest. It was titled, "Forgiveness I Never Asked For." Signed, IMC. I cried in silence, not because I still loved her, but because I finally understood that forgiveness isn't always for the one who asks, but for the one who gives it. A few months later, I was invited to give a talk at a university about abusive relationships. I shared my story anonymously, with respect and without hatred. At the end, a girl from the audience approached me and said, "Thank you for making me feel less alone." I felt like everything had been worth it. But the real closure came in an unexpected form. I was at a craft fair with Juliana when I saw Camila across the park. She was no longer the scared girl. She was a woman. She greeted me with a sad smile and slowly approached. She didn't mention her sister. She only said, "Thank you for being decent, for not returning with hate what you were given with poison. Many in your place would have destroyed my family. You chose to heal." I hugged her. It was brief, sincere, and when she left, I felt the last thread to the past unravel in the wind. Today I live in a small house, with plants I've managed to keep alive, and a cat named Minta who thinks she owns everything. Juliana and I don't talk about the future as a promise, but as a possibility we build each day. It's a love without ghosts. And every time someone asks if the story with Isabella was real, I just smile and reply, "It was a nightmare that taught me how to wake up." I hold no grudge, no nostalgia either. Just one certainty. I survived. And sometimes surviving is the greatest justice of all.